Okay, now in chapter 19, we're going to talk about first really three types of cost behavior. Actually, there are only two types. The third one's a hybrid of the first two. But we're going to go through those ways that our manufacturing costs, or just cost in general for any business, how those costs behave. The first one we want to look at, those are called variable costs. Now, on this page of notes, you've probably already noticed, but I have labeled each formula or each definition, the different sets of information anyway, by what problems that you'll use this information on. So maybe that helps you. First, though, let's look at variable costs. They vary in total with changes in the level of production. But however, on a per unit basis, variable costs remain the same as the production level changes. For example, if we're producing chocolate chip cookies, then chocolate chips are a variable cost of making the cookies. If we produce 10,000 batches of cookies, and our total chocolate chips cost will be much higher than if we only produced 100 batches of cookies. However, the cost per pound of chocolate chips, that's our per unit cost, let's say $5 per pound, remains the same no matter how many batches we produce. So what they're saying here, variable costs increase as the level, in total, variable costs increase as the level of production increases. Variable costs decrease as the level of production decreases. But on a per unit basis, they remain the same. So what we're saying here, we're paying $5 a pound for chocolate chips, no matter how many batches we produce. However, our chocolate chips cost goes way up if production goes way up, right? Our chocolate chips cost decreases dramatically if production decreases dramatically. So variable costs vary in direct proportion to the level of production in total. So any direct materials would be a variable cost. The more lawnmowers we produce, the more lawnmower blades we need. The more pencils we produce, the more erasers we need, right? So direct materials would always be a variable cost. Direct labor is also a variable cost, because if production increases to the point where we need to run a second or third shift, then direct labor costs would be much higher than if we're only running one shift at the factory, right? So direct materials and direct labor would always be variable cost. Okay, let's look at the next one. It's fixed cost. Okay, fixed costs remain the same in total with changes in the level of production. On a per unit basis, though, fixed costs decrease as production increases. For example, rent on the manufacturing facility is a fixed cost of producing chocolate chip cookies. Whether we produce 10,000 batches of cookies or 100 batches of cookies, our rent of $2,000 per month, which I just pulled out of the air, remains unchanged. What we're saying here, the landlord doesn't care how many batches of cookies you produce. Whoever owns the factory wants their $2,000 a month in rent, whether we produce 100 batches of cookies or 10,000 batches of cookies. That one's a fixed cost. But notice what happens to fixed cost, though, as production goes up. However, rent per unit produced decreases as production increases. Notice that rent is $20 per batch if we only produce 100 batches. But rent per batch decreases to 20 cents per batch if our production increases to 10,000 batches of cookies. So let's think about these. Variable costs in total increase when production increases and decrease when production decreases. Fixed costs in total remain the same. If production increases or production decreases, fixed costs remain that constant amount. However, on a per unit basis, variable costs are constant. All right, let's say we're paying $15 an hour for our direct labor. Well, we're going to pay them $15 per hour whether we only run one shift of employees or if we're running 3 shifts. The per hour amount remains the same. But if we run 3 shifts, variable cost in total for direct labor would be much higher than if we only ran 1. Fixed costs, though, on a per unit basis, they go down as production increases because those fixed costs are now spread over more units. Remember our example, we had $2,000 a month in rent. That's $20 per batch if we're only producing 100 batches of cookies. But it's 20 cents per batch if we produce 10,000 batches of cookies that month. Alright, so we're going to go through a problem in a video, 19.1a, where we label some costs as either variable or fixed. Our third category, a hybrid of the two, is called mixed cost. They contain one element of variable cost and one element of fixed cost. For example, we might pay our sales staff an annual salary of $30,000 each, plus commission of $100 per sale. The salary would be fixed, while the commission increases as sales increase. That would be variable. In cost analyses, we would separate mixed cost into the variable and fixed components. So, really you just have two, and then a hybrid of those two. So when we work problem 19.1a, and I'm going to do it for you in a video, and then you'll do problem 19.1b, we're going to label some cost as one of these 3. All right, now we will use this information after we're able to classify cost as either fixed or variable. Then we'll use that information to make some calculations about the business. Let's look at a few of those. We always want to remember that total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Now you might be thinking, what about mixed? Well, like we said, we would separate it out into the variable and fixed components. So total cost is always equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Okay, our contribution margin is sales minus variable cost. You're going to use that in the exercise 19-9, the revised version of it. I'll just ask you on the template that I give you to answer 2 questions. I'll ask you to calculate contribution margin. You'll be given sales and variable cost. You'll give me an answer. It's really straightforward. You're just subtracting there. And then you'll also, on exercise 19.9, it's a revised version. You'll use the information given in the book, but you'll answer questions on the template that I give you. You'll also calculate income from operations, which is really sales minus variable cost and fixed cost, or I worded it here, contribution margin minus fixed cost. Contribution margin just means after our variable costs are met, how much is left over to contribute towards fixed costs of the company, and then once those fixed costs are met, that contribution margin would go towards profit. So you will use these 2 formulas in the exercise 19-9, the revised version. You'll just answer the 2 questions from the Excel template using these 2 formulas. Really straightforward. Now the third one is one of my favorite things we look at in the book. We want to be able to calculate break-even sales in units. There we take total fixed cost in the top and divide by contribution margin per unit. Well, our contribution margin per unit is our sales price per unit minus variable cost per unit. Same as the formula up here, we just put it on a per unit basis. You'll use this formula to calculate the break-even point. meaning how many units do we have to sell in order to break even, at two different sales price levels in exercise 19-13. So you just refer back to these formulas for your two exercises you'll work here in chapter 19. They're really, I think, very straightforward. You'll just plug in the numbers. And you guys, the reason I say this is one of my favorite things to calculate, I think it's really important thing to look at if you want to maybe open your own business. It's very important in order to break even to keep these fixed costs to a minimum. So the lower your rent, the lower depreciation on equipment, the lower those kind of things, the lower you can keep those kinds of things in the beginning, the easier it is to break even. Also, another component is how large is your contribution margin. And that really refers to your markup. How much higher is the sales price per unit than variable cost per unit? With some items we can mark them up quite a bit, others not as much. If the markup's lower, then we would have to sell more units in order to break even, of course. If the markup's higher, then we'd sell fewer units to break even. So I think in the next video then, you guys, I'm going to work problem 19.1a, and then you'll do problem 19.1b. And I think I'll try to find some handout problems similar to these two. You'd probably be fine just working them using these formulas, but I'll work a couple for you from some PDF problems that I'll post so that they're different from the ones in your book. If you have any questions, please be in touch, and this should be fairly straightforward, I think. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks.